Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kong. Welcome to my channel. Today, I will be showing you guys a step-by-step tutorial on how you can build this beautiful full stack MERN stack to-do list application. So let's give a quick demonstration before we get into the coding. Okay, so it's not just like any regular to-do list. When you add a new task or when you complete a task, say, let me just add a new task, get food, okay? Press add. It shows up with a notification system. So on top of being a to-do list, we have a notification system. So let's say I completed this task. I'll just click on it. It will say task completed, get food. And you can see there's a line through saying we crossed off the task. Say we want to delete this, delete another notification saying the task has been deleted. Okay, so that's basically the whole functionality of the to-do list. It's very simple, but it will help you understand and learn how to build a full stack application using MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. Okay, so let me make this a little smaller. Let me move this out of the way and we will begin. As I code through this, I will make sure to try and explain step by step what every line of code is doing so that you guys can learn the most. Let's get started by making a new folder. I'm gonna call it to-do list, okay? So once we have this new folder, we want to open it up in VS Code. So let me go to VS Code and I want to open this newly created folder to-do list. Open, okay? So as you can see, we have opened up this to-do list folder and you want to open a new terminal as well. And so now we're inside this to-do list folder here. And since this is a full stack application, we need a back end as well as a front end. So let me make another folder, call it the server, and the server will be our back end. So this is where the Node.js, the Express, and the MongoDB stuff will go into. And let's make another folder called clients. This is where our React front end will go into. But for now, we will begin by building our backend, which is our server. So as you can see, we have server here as well. So now you want to go into the server folder. So CD server. CD stands for change directory. And as you can see, we are now inside server. So the first thing we want to do is to initialize our node project. So what we do is we type npm init, and since we want all the default settings, I'll just type in the flag -y for yes. So this will just create a new node project with all the default settings. So as you can see, it says it created a package JSON file. So if we go here, as you can see, package JSON, this is basically the settings file for the setting of this node project. As you can see as well, the index.js is the entry point. So we need to go ahead and inside the server, we need to right click on new file, and we need to click create the index.js file. So index.js. So once we have this, we need to go ahead and install some dependencies that our app will use, okay? So let me just clear the terminal. And to install dependencies, you can type npm install. And the dependencies we will need is, first of all, Express, because, MERN stack, we need Express. We need Mongoose, that will be used to connect our backend to the actual MongoDB database. And then we also need CORS. CORS is basically used to prevent cross-origin errors. I will explain that in a bit more detail as I code it up. So that's basically what we need to install for now. And as you can see, the dependencies are being installed. So if you go to package JSON again, so let me close this and open it, you can see the new dependencies have been added to the file. So now that we have these dependencies, we want to create our app using Express. So we need to first import the Express. So Express is equal to require this Express dependency. Okay, and then we want our application to use Express. So let's create a constant, call it app, and just do Express, just like that. Okay, and then so this is our backend, and we need to open up one port so that any requests can reach our backend. So let's define, let's define a port. Let's do 3333. And then we want our application, our backend, to listen to this port for any requests. So let's do a app listen on this port, and we want to log to ourselves that once the app opens up this port for listening to requests, we want to console log basically success port, and you want to put the port number. So you type the $, and port is active, okay? So now what we have just done is we have made our Express application and open up this port for listening to requests. So we can test it out by doing a node index.js. And as you can see, port 3333 is active. So the next thing we have to do for our application is we want our application to use the Express JSON parser. So constant, let's do app use express.json. Basically, I'll explain this when we get to the part when this parser is needed. But what you need to know now is we need this line of code in order to access any incoming request through the request body like that. And then we also want to use CORS as well to prevent cross-origin errors. So we want to basically import it. So constant CORS is equal to require CORS, okay? And we want our application to use it as well. So app use CORS. And basically what this does is when, like I said before, we will have the React front end in here, and it will make requests to get data from the back end. So like getting all this task list. And if we don't use CORS, we will get errors and we won't be able to retrieve data. We won't be able to delete data, update data from our backend. So that's what CORS is needed for. So after we have CORS installed, what we can do is the next step is to set up the connection to the MongoDB. So first of all, in order to connect to MongoDB, as you can see here, we installed Mongoose. So we will be using the Mongoose driver to connect to MongoDB. Well, let's first set up our database on MongoDB. So as you can see, I'm in MongoDB. So you can just Google MongoDB, and just go to it. But I'm already here. So, and you can just create your account here. If you don't have an account, I guess I will have a video here somewhere to show you how to create an account and set up MongoDB. But for now, I already have an account, so I'll just click on sign in. Okay, so sign in, I'll just use my email address. Yep. And I should have my password saved. So once you log in, you will see this screen, okay? And you want to create our database that this project will use, right? So what you want to do is you want to go here and you want to create project. I'm going to name it to-do list, just like that. And click next. And for now, you just need to give yourself access, okay? So create project. So the project is being created. So now after it's done, we need to create a database. You want to use the free type, okay? You want to have it on AWS using the region that they recommended for you. And the name of the database, let's call it to-do DB, okay? And so now I will create my database, okay? And then it will ask you to create a user that can be used to access the database. I'm just going to name it the root user, and my password is just going to be test. I will change this later, so don't try and hack my database because you're not going to be able to, okay? Let me just create user. And where would you like to connect from? I want to connect from my local environment, which is, my VS Code right here. As you see, we have. And this is by default added. So your IP address is allowed to connect to this database, but your IP address will change. Say you go to the library and you want to keep developing this project. you want to have access to this database as well. So what you need to do is type in 0000/0 to enable internet access, internet connection to this database from anywhere. So after that, you want to add entry. I don't care. So after you added this entry, you should be able to connect to this database using this username and password you just created from any IP address. So you can just finish and close, and you go to the database. So as you can see, we have the database here, ToDoDB, and now you need to get the connection string that this VS Code can use in order to connect from this index.js backend to the actual database. So you want to click on connect, and you want to click on compass, okay? You want to select your operating system, mine is already selected, and you want to copy this string, okay? And you want to replace this with the password you just created. Mine was test. So let me just copy this string, connection string, and go back to VS Code. Let me just paste it here for reference. And I'll change this to my password, which was just test, okay? So if you decide to upload this to VS Code, I mean, upload it to GitHub, GitLab, or anything, it's bad to have this connection string to your database hard-coded in here, because hackers can just access your Git repo and just connect to your DB because they will have the root, the user that you just created. So what you need to do is install. Let me just go here. Let me just Control-C to terminate this. Let me clear the terminal, and let me install a dependency called .env. So what this dependency will allow you to do is it will allow you to store this connection string in a environment variable file so that it doesn't get uploaded to Git, so it's secure. No one can hack into your DB. So after you have installed .env, what you need to do is you go into the server again, and you want to create a new file called .env, so .env. And then you want to get this connection string, so Control-X to cut, paste it in here, and you want to give this a variable. So this is an environment variable. I'm going to call it the Atlas URI, and you want to set it equal to this string, connection string that we just received from the console here, okay? So once we have this, we need to add a git ignore file so that this file will never get uploaded to the public. So let me just create a new file. And you don't want to create it inside the server. You want to create inside this to-do list. So you want to click here, and then you want to create a new file, git ignore, okay? And you can just paste all of this in here. I will explain it as well. So git ignore. First of all, you want to ignore this node modules here because this file is big and you don't want to upload this to Git, you know? You can just run npm install when you clone from Git in order to get this node modules back. And you want to ignore all the local env files. So .env, as you can see. So this file, when you try and upload it to GitLab or GitHub or Heroku or whatever, it will not be uploaded. So this will, no one is able to have access to your connection string. So once you have that, let's go ahead and require .env and then config. So this is basically allowing you to access all the environment variables in this file, okay? So once you do that, let's make a constant. The URI is going to be equal to process env, and the name of the variable is just, let me save this file. Name is just Atlas URI. So going back, boom. And to test whether this URI has this value, you can just add it here, okay? URI, and then $, and then you can just do a URI. So now if I restart my server, so node index.js, as you can see, URI is this URI, which is this one, okay? So I can just terminate this now. So once you have this connection string, let's use Mongoose to connect to our database. So let's do a constant Mongoose is equal to require mongoose. So this is just importing the mongoose dependency. And we go back down here. What we want to do is set up a mongoose connection. So we want to connect to the URI, and we want to use a new URL parser, and we want to set this to true. So what this basically does is it will try and connect to this URI, which is our MongoDB, and it's going to use the new URL parser to parse this URI. So once you have made this connection, you want to retrieve this connection and store it in a variable. So let's do a constant connection is equal to mongoose.connection. Okay. So once we have this connection, we want to make sure that the connection is open. So what we can do is connection once it's been opened, what we need to do is we can just have a console log statement. So similar to this, just copy this one. So once the connection is open, we can just console log success connected to the MongoDB DB for database. Okay. So, and this is, by the way, this is the backtick. It's to the top left of your keyboard. So just like that. Or you can use double quote as well. It would still work. So let's see if we can open port 333 and establish a connection to the MongoDB. Okay. What we can do is node index.js again. Okay, wait a little bit. As you can see, we have connected to the MongoDB database. So at this point, I'm getting tired of having to restart my node server every time. So what I can do is Control C, and let me introduce you guys to NodeMon. So first, let's install this dependency. So npm install NodeMon, okay? So once NodeMon has installed, we will just run it. So you can just run NodeMon and then index.js, or for some people, just to be on the safe side, you can do npx and then NodeMon and then index.js. And then basically what this does is that it will listen to changes that we make to this index file, and it will automatically update it so that we don't have to keep restarting our server. So for example, if I just add a bunch of random stuff here and then Control S to save, you can see it will say restarting due to changes, and our changes is already here. So let me just Control Z. So NodeMon is used for listening to updates and then automatically applying those updates without having to restart our server. So now let me just add a comment here, MongoDB connection. So now that we have established our Express application and establish our MongoDB connection, now we need to basically define what we will populate our MongoDB database with. And that is defined by creating a schema. And what our schema will have is we just have a task schema right here. As you can see, each task should have a name. So like start YouTube channel, and each task will have a status. For example, this is completed, this is not completed, and that's basically it. So let me go back here, and inside this server folder, very important, you want to create a new folder. Again, you have to create inside the server. You want to create a new folder, and you want to call it models. Okay. So inside this models is where we define our schemas and models. So we need to make a task.js file where we will define, first of all, the MongoDB schema and then the MongoDB model that we can use to write to our database, okay? So we need to, again, import MongoDB. So constant mongoose is equal to require mongoose, okay? So now, first we need to define a schema and then make a model and then export it to be used outside of this file. So once we have mongoose, let's do a constant task schema is equal to a mongoose schema. And this is where we will define our schema. So like I said, we need a task name, okay, which is of type string, okay, and it's a required parameter. So we cannot write to our database, right, if we just have a task without a task name. That wouldn't be valid. Like, there would be no point in putting that into a database. So that's why required needs to be true. True. Okay. Don't forget the commas. The commas are important. You get errors if you don't. Okay. And then add another comma here because we need another field. Like I said, we need to determine if a task has been completed or not. So we know whether to strike through the text on our front end. So task name, and then we need another variable, call it completed. And then our type this time would be a Boolean. So if you don't know, Boolean is a data type, and it can only have two values, either true or false, okay? Type Boolean. And then by default, when we first create a task, is it completed? No, false, okay? So there's no point in creating a task if it's already been completed, right? Okay, so once we have the task schema defined, so it's a very simple task schema. Once we have this, we will make a model from this schema. So constant task is equal to a mongoose.model, and it will be named task, and it will use the task schema, okay? So once we have made this task mongoose model from this task schema, we need to export it so that it can be used outside of this task file. So for example, it can be used here. So we do a module exports equal to just this task. And boom, that's basically it. You just finish creating your task model for this project. That's all the models that you need. So now we can go back to this index file. And the next thing we need to do is to create routes and a router so that this backend can connect to the MongoDB. So this is a little confusing, I understand. So that's why I think now it's a good time for me to draw up some sort of diagram or visualization to help you guys understand what everything is doing. So let me just go here and let me just go to, do I have another tab open? Yeah, I'll just use here, okay? So I'll just do an online paint, okay? And I'll just draw this so to help you guys visualize everything. Hopefully everything is making sense. If you're finding value in this tutorial, you know, it would mean a lot if you could like the video and drop a subscribe or hit the subscribe button. So basically just a visualization of what we've done so far. Let me just take a screenshot of this. So this is our back end, right? So this is our back end. No. Okay, this is kind of big, so let me make this small. Now that's too small. One more time, one more try. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay. All right, so this is our beautiful back end, okay? Let me label it. Label back end Node.js and Express, okay? And then we have our front end here. So let me just take a quick screenshot. Hopefully I don't have to resize this. So Control V, make this small, move this here. This is our front end, okay? Front end, which is React, which we will code after we finish with our back end, right? So we have the front end and we have the back end, and then we have one more thing. This MongoDB database, okay? Collections is currently empty because we haven't written any data to it. So let's say this is our database, our MongoDB. So let me paste it down here. So minimize, boom. Okay, so this is our actual database. So database DB, okay? So we have these three components here. We have our back end, which we have been coding so far. We have our front end, which is the React, and we have the database. So let's go back. So if you remember, we opened up port 3333. So what that does is, let me just rearrange this, okay? So what happens is our front end, so our React, will make requests to the back end through port 3333. So port 3333. I can move this. Oh. Select and then move. So basically our backend is listening on port 3333 for any connections from our front end or from anywhere else. But for this project, we're only doing it from our React front end. So for example, if I create a new task, say new task, okay, add, what happens is this new task here, let me just, oh, fuck, I missed it. All right, anyway, so this new task here will go to port 3333, okay? And then once it's in the back end, through this URI right here, and this connection, it will write to the database. So where's the URI and then Mongoose connection right here? It will connect and write that data to the to-do database, right? But what we need is to open up routes. So let me just add the comment here. So now create router and routes. So how does it connect to, how does the backend connect to the database, the MongoDB? It will do it through routes. So let me just do that. So router and routes to connect to the DB. Okay, so hopefully this visualization is helpful to make you guys understand. Just to go over it again, we make a request from the front end. It goes to port 3333 on the back end, and the back end needs a router and routes to write data, receive data from the MongoDB, okay? So let's go back to server, make a new folder. Let's call it models, okay? Actually, sorry, not models. We already made models, so routes, okay? And inside this route, we need a new file. So make sure it's inside the routes. New file, and we want to call it task plural.js. So this is where we will define all our routes. So we need a express router. So we need to import express again. So constant express is equal to require express, just like that. And then we need an express router. So constant router is equal to express router. Remember, capital R, very important, okay? I don't know what just happened. Let me, quick water break, and then we'll continue. Sorry. All right, now, back to making the route, okay? So once you have a router, you want to create routes, like I said. Back to the diagram. We need routes. So yeah, let's go. I'll explain in more details later after we code up everything. So first of all, we need to be able to add new tasks to the database through a route, right? So let me just delete that, okay? So the route to add a new task from the front end to the back end to the MongoDB is called, we will need to make a post request, okay? So router on post request to this directory, I'll explain later. And when we get to it, you know, I keep saying I'll explain later, like I'm not putting it off. Like I will be sure to explain it when we get to that part of making an actual post request. Okay, so when we post, we want to have an asynchronous function that takes in a request and give back a response. Okay, And what we want to do is when we make a post request, we have to send data from the front end, and that data will be sent in the request body. Like I said, that's what we use this express JSON for, to get the JSON data from the request from the front end inside the request body. So if we didn't have this line, we wouldn't be able to get the data, get this task name inside the request body. So hopefully that explains it. Okay, so let's make a constant new task, because this is the new task that we will add to the database, is equal to a new task right here. So as you can see, it automatically imported the task as soon as I type new task. So make sure to import that if you haven't, otherwise it will make an error. And how this works is we have to go to where this task model is located. And as you can see, we're currently inside the routes folder. So we need to go outside. So that's what the 2 periods are for. So once we go outside, we're inside the server, and then we need to go inside the models folder, which is here. And then we get the task file. So that's what this is for, okay? So this new task, we need to pass it the data, and the data is present in the request body, okay? So here, this line is needed so that we can access the request body. So in our to-do list, what will be contained in the request body is just the task name, okay? So once you have this new task, we want to try and save this to the database. And if there's an error, we need to log it to the user and to our console down here. So we will surround our save statement to save this new task to the database in a try catch, okay? So now what we will try and do is do a constant saved task is equal to await for this new task to be saved to the database, okay? If this is successful, then in our response that we will send back to the front end, we can do a response status, and we send a status code of 200, which means success, okay? And we want to send back this JSON object of the save task as well. And we want to log to the console.log. We can just do a success adding new task to DB, just like that. Again, you can use double quotes, you can use single quotes, but it has to be consistent. But I prefer to just use tilde in case I want to embed any variables, just like how I have it here, you know, like the URI. Let me just delete that because we don't need to tell the user the URI or anything like that. Okay, success, adding new tasks to the database. Let me add the semicolon down here, okay? And then if we try to save this new task to the MongoDB and it failed, it will throw an error and we need to catch it here. So we want to give a result and want to send back a status of 500, which means error. And we want to send back the JSON object that is the actual error itself. Okay, and we also want to console log to ourselves failed, adding the new task to the DB. Okay, and you can also log the error as well to debug, but we don't need it because I'm not going to make any errors. Okay, so we just finished making a post request, which allows us to basically add new tasks to the database. That's what a post request is, okay? The next one is when we, refresh this page, we want to be able to get all the tasks that are in the database. And that is done through making a GET request, okay? So we want to do a router GET. So this is making a GET route. And the directory is just this. And you want to create another asynchronous function with a request and a response. And you want to basically surround and try catch. Because now what we'll try and do is we will try and get all the tasks that are present in our database. So let's create a constant task list is equal to await this task, and then task find and want to find everything, okay? Await task find, okay? If this is successful, we want to send this back to, first of all, the status code to be 200, which is success, and you want to send this JSON object back, which is the task list, okay? And we also want to console log. Let me just plagiarize myself and copy this. Success, retrieving task from database, okay? And then console log, failed, retrieving task from database, and you also want to send back the error, okay? Result would be 500, and you want to send back the error as well, okay? In case we couldn't get all the tasks from the database for some unknown reason, okay? So we just made a GET request, which is basically used to get all the tasks that are present in the database. So GET route is done. Next one is to update, which is a put request. So say we want to say I finish uploading this MERN tutorial to YouTube, and I can finally press upload. I need to change the status of this, right? Of this task. So that's done through a put request. So router put. And which task do we want? We will need to pass in the task ID. That's why in the directory here, you have to put the colon and then ID. And then we need another async function with a request and a response. And we want to try and update the status of this. So try, first of all, we need to get the task that needs to be modified. So constant mod task for modified task is equal to await task find by ID, the task ID that we put in here. So that is going to be in the request, and it's going to be in the parameters, and the parameter name is ID, okay? So once we have found this task, what we need to do is mod task. We want to access the complete field as we define in here, completed. So task completed is equal to the opposite of mod task completed, okay? So if this was not completed and I click on it, it will become the opposite. So it will become completed. But if this is completed and I click on it, it will become the opposite, which is not completed, okay? So once we have modified the completed flag, we want to write this back to the database. So we want to do a mod task save. If this is successful, we want to send a result status of 200, and then we want to send the JSON object, which is the mod task, back to the user. Otherwise, if we fail, let me just plagiarize myself. Oh, we need to do a console log as well. Console log success, updating task in database, okay? Let me plagiarize myself again. If it fails, we want to send back a status of 500 and send back the error object, as well as we want to console log failed updating task in database. So that basically takes care of updating a task status. So what we've done so far is we've made a post request right here to take care of adding new task to the DB. We've made a get route to handle get requests from the front end when we refresh the page or when we first load up the page to get all the tasks that are in the DB. And then we also have done a put request to update the status of a task in the DB. So finally, we want to delete. So for example, we want to delete this new task, okay? Then that is done through a delete request. So router delete, we want to delete the task ID. So ID, we need to pass in the ID again. Another asynchronous function with a request and a response. I don't know what happened here, but okay. Boom. We want to try and delete this from our database. So try catch again. So let's do a constant deleted task. So del task for deleted task is equal to await task find by ID and delete. Okay, so we're going to find this task and we will completely delete it from our database. Okay, find by ID and delete. The task ID can be accessed through the request parameters ID. So if this is successful, we send in the response a status of 200 and JSON of the deleted task. And we also want to console log. I'm not going to plagiarize myself this time, okay? Console log success deleting task from DB. And if for some reason, we couldn't find the task with this ID and we couldn't delete it, it will throw an error. So what we need to do is send a response with a status of 500 back, and the JSON object would be the error itself. And I'm not going to plagiarize myself, and I'll put console log the actual error. Well, not yet. I'm just going to say, okay, now I'm going to plagiarize myself just for this console log, This will become failed, deleting tasks from the database. So then we have it, ladies and gentlemen. We have created all the routes needed for the back end of this project. So now we need to be able to use these routes outside of this task file and inside this index, okay? So what we need to do is we need to export this. So module export is equal, we need to export this router that we created right here. So export is equal to this router. Okay, so once we have defined this export with all these routes, the post, get, put, and delete, we can import it here in our backend file. So let's go back to our beautiful diagram here. And we can just import, let me just get my beautiful pen and start drawing. So I want a bright color so you guys can see. So once is it drawing? It's not drawing? Pencil, sorry. Still not drawing? Spray paint? Oh, why is it white? I don't want spray paint. Pencil. So what we have just done, I don't know if you can see that. Let me make red. What we have just done is we have created a router and the routes. So this file, this task.js file. So now we need to import it into this part of our backend so that we can use it, right? So that's exactly what we are going to do now. We go back to index.js file where we say create router and routes, and you want to import it. So constant router is equal require. We want to go into the routes folder and you want to use the task route, okay? So what this is doing is from the server, it goes into the routes and it gets the task.js router, okay? And you want our application, our Express application to use it, to use this router. So app.use, we need to define the URL to this router. I would just do a /API and then task, and then we want to use the router. So that's basically the entire backend. Congratulations. Router use required middleware function, but got an object. So app.use. So it crashed for some reason. So, oh, this should be exports. So plural. So if you save, as you can see, everything is working. So this error, you have to use exports with plural, so with an S. So as you can see, now you have completed your backend. We can test it out before moving on to our front end, okay? So just to recap before we begin testing, front end will be coded later in the next part. We'll make requests from the front end to the back end through port 300333. And in our back end, which is an Express application, we use the Mongoose driver to connect to MongoDB right here through the router that we defined. And we write data to the backend, to the MongoDB. That data needs to comply to the task schema that we have just defined here. Okay, so now let's test it. I would recommend you guys download this Thunder client, which we can use to make post requests, get requests, delete requests, put requests to our backend. So just go to extensions and install Thunder client. So once you have that installed, let's just open Thunder client here, okay? And we want to make a new request, okay? And where do you want to request it? First of all, we want to access our local host port 3000, right? So let me just close this. We need to change here to http:// local host 3333. So that is basically the front end going to here, right? So instead of our React front end, our Thunder client this time will be our front end. So this Thunder client here will just be our front end, okay? So we just connected to port 3333, but we need to connect to the router as well. And as you can see, we have defined in our router, so tasks.js. Sorry, no, we defined in here. We need to use this route. So API task, okay? So let me just copy that and then go here and then paste. So this is the entire route from our Thunder client to our backend to MongoDB. So right now, let me go back to MongoDB. As you can see, our database is empty. So like I mentioned, a post request will write data to our database. So what I will need to do is go here, change it to a post request, go to body, and you want to send a post request containing data that aligns to our task schema. So our data that we send to the post request needs to have a task name and a completed status, okay? So I have already wrote it here. So let me just access it 1 second real quick. Boom, I have already defined a sample post request. So I'll just paste it. So you need the brackets, and then you need to define a task name. Let's say, this is boring. I just want to say, finish coding backend, okay? We just did that, right? So we want to post that to our database. So let me send it. Localhost API task. So we're getting some errors, unfortunately. We couldn't post. Oh, I found the error. It should be localhost. Sorry, missing an L, okay? Missing an L. I will crop this out. Okay, so boom. Finish coding backend. Okay, so now we go to our database and we refresh this. It will show up. I guarantee you. Please hurry up. My viewers are waiting and I don't want to waste their time. Why? Okay, it's finally up. Finish coding backend. So we actually added it twice, okay? So as you can see here, we console log success, adding new tasks to the database, which means that the request went to the post, it was saved to the database, and we logged out to the console success. So now we want to test our get request, okay? So get request, and you don't need anything. You don't need this in our get request because, again, the get request is just to get all the tasks that are in the database. So let me just send, sorry, wrong one. So post request works. Let me make a get request, okay? This is just sending a request to get everything from the database. So what we should get back is we should get back 2. As you can see, whatever's in the database will be sent back, right? Okay, so now say I completed coding the backend, so this task with this ID, right? I want to make a call to this ID, and I want to do a put request. So what this will do is it will modify this to be true, because here, as you can see, the put request, it will just get the status of completed, which is currently false, and it will make it to the opposite. So opposite of false is true. So let me make this put request. So send, and now it has been turned to true. So if we go back to the database and we refresh, click here, it's taking a while. So let me just make a get request then, delete this task ID. I'll just cut it, and boom, as you can see, it has been completed. So for some reason, this is slower than Thunder Client. Not sure why, but as you can see, it has been modified. So now the last thing we want to test is we want to test deleting this, okay? So we just need to send a delete request, send, and as you can see, this has been deleted. So if we do a get request to API task, it should only have one, as you can see. And if we refresh, this object will be gone. So let me refresh and show it to you guys. Loading, almost done, guys. Ugh. All right, for some reason, it's very slow, and I'm not sure why, but as you can see here, let me make another request. You only have one. So let me try and just delete this one as well. So delete this one. I'll just do a delete. Boom. As you can see, it's been deleted. So if you do a get request now to API task, it should be empty. As you can see, the response returned nothing. So we have successfully coded our backend. I will take a break before I come back and code up our front end here. Boom. Beautiful, right? So if you have made it through to this point and you're enjoying this tutorial, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button. Or if you have any question, feel free to leave it in the comment. I would be happy to help you guys. And then we'll move on to coding the front end soon. Thank you for watching and see you soon.